It's Friday, everyone. What do we do on Fridays here at the Hint Hive? That's right, we smash the patriarchy. Hey Hive, welcome back to the Hint Hive, amplifying women's voices. I'm your host, Kelly Hint, queen bee of this hive, feminist life coach, and psychotherapist, here to shake the table and challenge the norms. Today we're diving into a topic that ties together two major movements, feminism and environmentalism. That's right, we are talking about eco-feminism. What does saving the planet have to do with women's rights? Well, a hell of a lot. The way we treat the earth and the way society treats women are more connected than you might think. Women, especially in marginalized communities, are disproportionately affected by climate change, pollution, and exploitative industries. So let's break it down, debunk some myths, and talk about what we can actually do about it. Buckle up because this episode is going to be equal parts enlightening and action-packed. Okay, let's just jump right in and start with the basics. Eco-feminism is a social and political movement that sees a direct link between the exploitation of nature and the oppression of women. The term was coined in the 1970s by French feminist Françoise Daubon, and it's all about how patriarchal systems of power exploit both women and the environment. Here's a reality check. Globally, women are more affected by climate change than men. According to the United Nations, 80% of people displaced by climate disasters are women. Why? Well, because in many communities, women are the ones who are responsible for gathering food, water, and fuel, all of which are impacted significantly by environmental destruction. Women are also more likely to suffer from health issues related to pollution and hazardous working conditions. And of course, let's not forget the industries that exploit both women and the environment. Fast fashion, agriculture, and even beauty industries all have a nasty history of labor exploitation and environmental harm. The chemicals used in beauty products disproportionately affects women, while the garment industry thrives on underpaid female workers in unsafe conditions. Now, ecofeminism calls out these patterns and demands a shift, not just to save the planet, but to dismantle oppressive structures that keep women, especially women of color and indigenous women, at the bottom of the power hierarchy. So, why are women so deeply connected to environmental issues? It's not just about roles and responsibilities. In many indigenous and matriarchal societies, women have traditionally been the keepers of ecological knowledge, stewards of land, water, and sustainable living practices. Yet, their voices are often erased from mainstream environmental movements. Sound familiar? I mean, the name of this podcast includes amplifying women's voices, and it's intentional because so often throughout history and currently, women's voices are erased. And I don't know about you, but I am damn sick of it. Now, let's take a look at some badass women leading the eco-feminist charge. First up, we have Wangari Maathai. She is the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She founded the Green Belt movement, which has planted over 50 million trees in Kenya, while empowering women through employment and land ownership. Hell yes. I love hearing that. And then next up, we have Vandana Shiva, an Indian scholar and activist fighting against corporate control of agriculture and for seed sovereignty for rural women farmers. Again, something you don't hear about. Until I did this research, there was only one name that I had ever heard of. Shame on the world for silencing these women. And it's the next one who I've heard of, and I'm sure many of you have too. Greta Thunberg. And apologies if I am mispronouncing your name, Greta. She is proof that even young women can shake the system and demand climate action from world leaders. Now, I do not care what you think of that young lady. I've heard all kinds of very negative things said about her. But I'm sorry, her activism is so impressive for such a young woman. I love to see a woman, especially a young woman, fearlessly using her voice to push back against injustices and at such a young age. Again, I don't care how you feel about the delivery of her message. The fact that she is stepping out of her comfort zone and using her voice, hell yes. Go, girl, go. I'm just so beyond impressed with that. And as a matter of fact, I will say maybe I'm even a little bit jealous because I would have loved at that age to have been so assertive and vocal about any issue, really, not just environment issues and taking on world leaders, but just about anything. So go, Greta, go. Next up, we have Aissatou Ceesay, who is a Gambian activist who started a movement to recycle plastic waste while also creating economic opportunities for women. Fan-freaking-tastic. And last up, we have Autumn Peltier. She is an Indigenous water activist from Canada fighting for clean water rights and environmental justice. Their work, all of these women, their work reminds us that climate justice is social justice. We cannot talk about environmentalism without addressing gender inequality. Now, let's take a minute to discuss how capitalism and patriarchy harm both women and the planet. I mean, let's just get real. Capitalism thrives on exploitation. I'll fight you on this one. I will stand by that fact. I believe in all of my heart that capitalism is very exploitative. Capitalism exploits people, especially marginalized women, and it exploits the planet. Think about fast fashion. Cheap labor from underpaid women in factories producing clothes made from unsustainable materials that end up in landfills. Or big agriculture. Corporations bulldozing indigenous lands, polluting water, and trapping women in cycles of poverty. Now, I would love to call out the names of some of these companies. However, I can't afford to get sued. I'm trying to do big things in the world, and I can't do it from a jail cell because I can't pay millions of dollars to anyone. So I will keep the names of these companies to myself, but feel free to do a little bit of Googling on this. Well, I mean, if Google has any factual information anymore, you never know. Anyway, let's talk about corporations for a second. The bane of my existence. I don't like big corporations any more than I like big pharma, but I feel, unfortunately, that we are trapped at times, depending on where we live. Sometimes we don't have the options of going for the small business. And so we're stuck with corporations. Corporations, they push for overconsumption, marketing products designed to break down quickly so that we keep buying more. And then the burden of cleaning up this environmental mess often falls on women, who take on more responsibility in household waste management, sustainable food sourcing, and community activism. And, when I think of this, I think of like elderly grandparents talking about how everything's so throwaway now and nothing lasts. I remember seeing, like thinking of old-timey pictures for you younger listeners of people like kids wearing hand-me-down clothes with patches sewn on them from, in the knees, because there's always holes in the knees, right? We don't do that anymore. We're not sewing patches on clothes and reusing. There's still hand-me-downs, but for the most part, big corporations are making things so incredibly cheaply that they just don't last. You can't even put a patch on a hole, and also the skills to mend clothing, that's dying out. There are a lot of us that don't know how to sew. There are a lot of us who couldn't mend something unless there was a very specific YouTube tutorial on doing that. So in part of this is, again, this is all so intersectional. With like feminism movements, like women were getting into the workplace, and then all of a sudden you had to have a 2-person household income in order to survive. Otherwise, you're having to rely on social services. And so where's the time? Where's the time for the good, wholesome, home-cooked meals, the fixing, the hemming of the clothes, the patching of the clothes? There's no time for that anymore. We've moved away from a simpler time, and here we are in modern days with modern conveniences, but unfortunately, it is impacting the earth and it is impacting women. And I'm sorry, but patriarchy and capitalism go hand in hand, and they are both terrible for the environment. We need a new system. We need one that prioritizes sustainability, fair wages, and gender equity. Well, enter Eco-Feminism. And, talking about these issues is great, but we actually need to act. We need to do more than just sit around bitching about modern times and how we wish for the simplicity of older times. All I see anymore when I log into any source of social media or do any kind of Google searching, whatever, I just see people sitting around bitching about the way it is. Okay, yeah, I get it. Things suck for a lot of people right now, but if you're just sitting around bitching, you are changing nothing. You are not being part of the solution. I'm not going to say you're being part of the problem. Some people are. Some people are bitching and being a huge part of the problem. But if all we're doing is sitting around whining about this, that, and the other, and we are not taking action, come on. Nothing is going to change unless we do something. So let's talk about how to embrace ecofeminism. So I came up with a list of 7 things that you can start doing today. The first one, and I'm very passionate about this one, support women-led sustainable businesses. Buy from ethical brands owned by women, especially women of color. They are more likely to prioritize environmental and social impact. And it's really cool. Like even I think on Google and Facebook, you can see sometimes there's tags that'll say like women-owned business, LGBTQ plus owned business. I love that. I absolutely love it because And I don't even want to hear any of you whining to me about reverse racism, because I'm not going to entertain that BS at all. As somebody, I'm a gender minority as a woman. And so I appreciate being able to indicate that I am a woman-owned business, because there are other women who want to support women. So do it. And then there are white women like myself who want to support women of color, because, and I'm actually, next week's podcast episode is going to address some of these issues. But as a modern feminist, I've done my research and I've seen where feminism went wrong in the early stages, and I am trying to correct the wrongs. And so I will give priority. Excuse me, sorry about that. I'm still getting over my sickness. I will give priority to women and women of color, because historically it has been women and women of color. All women, regardless of color, have been marginalized. So I want to give them a leg up. So that's something that you can do. Support women-led sustainable businesses. Because again, not to be too gender stereotypical, but there is science behind the fact that there are differences in genders at times. There are some very common, sometimes stereotypical qualities, and compassion and nurturing is a very natural part of being a woman. And so women do often tend to think a little bit more with the heart than the head, if that makes sense. Again, please, I don't want to hear all the negativity and all the hate in my inbox about how I'm being sexist or any of that nonsense. Go listen to Joe Rogan if you want to deal with that. Anyway, so again, I think it is very easy to support women-led sustainable businesses, because more often than not, women are leading the charge on stuff like that. And then the next one, this might be hard, ditch the fast fashion. You can either thrift, swap, or buy from sustainable brands that treat workers fairly. This one may be a little bit harder to find and a little bit harder to do, and I'm going to address that in a second. The next piece here is advocate for policy change. Support policies that address both climate justice and gender equity. Call your representatives and make noise, especially now. Oh my gosh, now is the time. In the United States, things are blowing up a little bit with the new administration. Get involved. Call your representatives. And next actionable step that you can take is to reduce your environmental footprint. I'm having lots of fun with this one on myself. So use less plastic, cut down on waste, and eat more plant-based meals, because small changes add up. And I'm not telling you that you have to go and eat like fake meat. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that sometimes you can have a meal that doesn't involve meat. Also, one of the things that I'm doing that I'm having so much fun with, okay, so clearly my version of fun is a little bit different from others at times, but I got a compost tumbler for my backyard, and all of my food waste goes into the tumbler. And also, like, I shred paper and other things that are compostable, and I get to use that to put nutrients back into the earth. I'm super, super excited for gardening this year, because I'm going to have a huge compost pile. I also, I'm getting chickens, and so I will have my own eggs, but also, like, the cool part about that is the chicken poop is actually going to be amazing compost. So again, I'm finding as many interesting ways as possible to reduce my environmental footprint. And I encourage you to get creative and do these things also. Like, try to find something. I'm also thinking about getting a rain barrel. I know in some states and or municipalities, rain collection is not legal. So check your local municipality on that one. All right, the next piece here that you can do, educate and amplify. Share what you learn. Support women-led climate movements. And call out greenwashing when you see it. This is one of the things that I'm trying to do in the podcast, to educate, to amplify. And I encourage you to find ways that you can do it also. And then the next piece, engage in community organizing. All my introverts right now are screaming at me saying, oh, hell no. But again, you don't have to do all these. I will address that in a minute. But seriously, try to find and join some local environmental and feminist groups, attend rallies, work on some grassroots activism. It can be fun. You can meet new people. And I know sometimes the concept of meeting new people is icky, but come on, we need to find some like-minded peeps out there because times are a little crazy right now, right? And the last piece here is demand corporate accountability. Push companies to be transparent about their environmental and labor practices. Use your voice and your consumer power to demand ethical changes. Now, I understand that this is a lot and that many people can't do all of these things. I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to do all of these things. It's okay to not be able to do all these things, but just start somewhere. Start small. And I understand that sometimes finances impact our ability to purchase the most ethically sourced or healthy products. I mean, hell, I almost passed out at the grocery store when I had to pay for a very small bag of organic food. So much for cheaper groceries, right? All right, I'll shut up before I get political. My point here is that I understand that sometimes it comes from a place of privilege to talk about doing some of these things. I acknowledge it. I get it. But just try to find your way that's doable for you, that you can try to make an impact. All right. This week's quote is from Wangari Maathai. You cannot protect the environment unless you empower people, you inform them, and you help them understand that these resources are their own, that they must protect them. My friends of the Hive, let that sink in. Empowerment and education go hand in hand with saving the planet. All right, Hive, we have covered a lot today. Eco-feminism isn't just an abstract idea. It's a movement. It's a call to action, and it's a way of life. The fight for gender equality and the fight for a sustainable future are the same fight. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one action from today's list and commit to it. Then share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Let's get more people talking about ecofeminism and making real changes. And hey, if you're loving this podcast, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and join our Facebook group where we can keep these conversations going. Because your voice matters, and together we can and we will build a better world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep challenging, and keep amplifying women's voices. Stay badass, and I'll see you in the next episode. This podcast is powered by Kelly Hint Empowerment Coaching, as well as Kelly M. Hint LMHC and The Cranky Counselor. To find out more about coaching services, head over to CoachKellyHint.com. If you'd like to know more about the psychotherapy services I offer to individuals within the state of New York, you can check out KellyMHint.com. And if you'd like to learn more about aromatherapy, you can check out TheCrankyCounselor.com.